Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this NQA webinar, which is part of a series of webinars to help you transition to the new ISO 9001 2015 standard. My name is Margaret Rooney. I am a regional assessor with NQA, and I'm also responsible for helping assessors and clients prepare themselves for the new standard. My apologies. So today is to look at how to transition successfully. This is not so much a technical webinar as a webinar to help you understand the process and to give you some guidance on how to transition to the 2015 standard. So just to look at what we'll be covering today, we'll have a quick look again at the new structure of the standard and the key concepts of ISO 9001 2015. I'm sure you're all already very familiar with this, so we won't dwell on that for too long. And the real purpose of today is to look at the guidance, the guidelines for transitioning, the options available to you, because there are various options that you can use, and to give you some hints and tips on how to make your transition, or how we can collectively make your transition as smooth and painless as possible. If you have a question, there is a chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and do submit your questions as we go along. We will have a few minutes at the end of this session to take questions. If there are any questions that I can't answer immediately, we will get back to you with a response. Though please don't leave your questions to the end. Do submit them as we go along. Right, just a quick revision, the new structure and the concepts. We have the Annex SL structure, which the 2015 standard is based on, and that covers scope, normative references, terms and definitions. Then we have context, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, and improvement. And these clause headings are in blue because these are the auditable sections of the 2015 standard. So, changes and emphasis and terminology that come with Annex SL are context, leadership, planning, strategic direction, documented information. These are new concepts and themes that come with Annex SL, the common structure of all management system standards. Specific to the new ISO 9001 requirements are the process approach, risk-based thinking, organizational knowledge, and externally provided products and services. So, the new challenges that 2015 brings us, the concept of context, leadership, risks and opportunities, processes, systems with potentially less documentation. I say these are new challenges. They may not be new challenges to yourselves, but traditionally in certification assessments, we have not necessarily looked at all of these things in detail. That will change with the 2015 standard. So, the new standard requires integration into business as usual. In other words, your management system, your quality management system, should be less visible as a separate entity. We're very much moving in the direction of a business management system. avoid the temptation to use Annex SL requirements as a checklist. The key to effective implementation will be subtlety of approach and professional judgment. And I think it's fair to say we'll all get better at this as we go along. Incidentally, I should have mentioned that this webinar is being recorded, so you will have the opportunity to listen to this again at your leisure, and indeed to encourage your colleagues who may not have been able to join in today, that they could also listen at a later time. So just in summary, we have changes that the new standard brings, and we have significant changes. So I would suggest that the changes are reduced emphasis on documentation, no explicit requirement for a management representative, no explicit reference to preventive action, and some new terminology. Significant changes are the elevated focus on the process approach. I say that because the process approach isn't new, but the 2015 standard does emphasize it more. We have risk-based thinking, including opportunities, and we have the Annex SL structure itself, which now gives a common framework to all management system standards. So that's just been a fairly quick gallop through the standard changes themselves, which, as I've said, I suspect a lot of you are already familiar with. However, if you have missed our webinars on the changes to the standard itself, these are available as recordings. So, guidance on the transition itself. Just to emphasize that all the ISO 9001-2008 certificates will expire on the 14th of September 2018. That's a little over 2 years away. It'll come around fast, so we need to be mindful of this. But you do have a couple of years. The transition from 2008 to the 2015 version, that will be accomplished during a single visit. So if your current certificate expires before the 14th of September 2018, you can still be re-registered to the 2008 version. And not surprisingly, in this first 12 months of the new standard, not all our clients feel ready to transition just yet. So we are recertifying to the 2008 standard. But we are making clear that the absolute deadline is September 2018. And when you can demonstrate that you fulfill all the requirements of the 2015 standard, a new certificate will be issued to you. So, what do you need to do? Well, what you certainly need to do is not panic, so don't panic. So that's what you don't need to do is panic. There are various options for transition, and I'll go through those now. As I keep emphasizing, you do have to September 2018 to transition, and this can be achieved in one of 3 ways. The first option, and this is our recommended option, is that you transition at a reassessment, at a recertification visit. You can also opt to transition at a surveillance visit, in which case the surveillance would be treated as a recertification transition visit, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Or you may opt to have a special visit, a special transition visit, that would be arranged with us outside of your normal surveillance schedules. And this can be done at any time by agreement with ourselves, or between yourselves and your assessor. Let's look at option 1. This is our recommended option of transitioning at the reassessment, the 3-year recertification visit. So we recommend that you use this opportunity to undertake your transition, as it will minimize the amount of additional audit time that you will need over the 3-year audit cycle. A transition visit may require additional time. We will advise you, if you decide when you're having your transition visit, it's possible that the transition can be done within the normal time scale of your recertification, normal duration of your recertification. In some instances, it may need to be more, but we will advise you of that. If your reassessment visit is between September 2015 and September 2016, and September 2016 is getting pretty close now, and you don't feel ready to transition, you would be better to consider options 2 or 3. And as I've already indicated, a number of our clients are already doing that. Let's look now at option 2. This is when you may opt to transition at the time of one of your normal surveillance visits within your surveillance cycle. So the full transition will be conducted at the time of your surveillance audit, and additional time may need to be added to that to allow complete full assessment against the new standard. For this reason, it's important that if you wish to transition at a time of your normal surveillance, that you do let us know that that is what you would like to do. And if you're successful in that transition audit, we will issue a new certificate and reset the certification cycle. So you'd be into a slightly different 3-year certification cycle. So if you transition, say, a year before your normal recertification, then you will be issued with a certificate for 3 years from that point. So you'll be into a new, as I say, a new cycle, which would be a year earlier than your normal one. I hope I'm making that reasonably clear. Transition option 3, a special transition visit which can be carried out at any time. So it would be a standalone visit outside of the annual sequence, or where, and this doesn't happen very often, but just in case for some reason the current certificate has expired and a special visit needs to be set up, you could opt to do your transition at that point. And again, if you're successful during that special visit, we would issue a new certificate and reset your certification cycle from that point. So your new 3-year cycle would start at that point. Transition hints and tips. Just to remind you, if you do have any questions or indeed comments on anything that I've said so far, do make use of the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. So, hints and tips. If your next visit is a recertification visit, your assessor should contact you well in advance to establish if you wish to transition. If you wish to transition at your next visit, whether this is a recertification or a surveillance visit, please email us and let us know that that is your intention. And there is a dedicated email address for this, transition@nqa.com. So indeed, any queries you have around transition, be they technical, administrative, or any queries at all, you can contact us in that way. If you are expecting a transition visit, do check your confirmation letter carefully and make sure that it is a 2015 standard that is cited. And if it's not, or if your letter is not clear or you're in any doubt, do contact us immediately to make it clear that the visit that has been agreed with ourselves is going to be a transition visit. And again, there is a special email address, or you can call our inquiries office number, and it's option 5. You can ask to be put through to someone to whom you can talk directly about the transition and your wishes in that respect. Now, in the lead up to your transition visit, we ask you to complete a gap analysis tool. And the first page of it looks like on the right hand side of your screen there. So this tool, it's document number TR006. It's designed to assist you with your preparation. It's a 2-part document, which is now at revision 4, as you can see there. In the first part, there's a table called New Concepts, and you must complete this prior to the transition visit. And Table 2, Part 2, Requirements, it's strongly recommended that you complete this prior to the transition visit. I think it does 2 things. I think it helps clarify to you the sort of things that where the changes are and the things you need to think about, and it will also ease the transition process if you have given this some thought before your assessor actually arrives to do the transition visit. So just a screenshot there of part of the part 1 of this form. I'm not going to go through the full form, but just to give you a flavour of what it looks like. So there's, on the left hand side, you see we've identified the new concepts, we've identified the related clauses, the activities that you need to have undertaken or the things you need to have thought about, and then the column on the right hand side, evidence of compliance. This is where you record where you believe the evidence is. So it might be records we can look at, documents we can look at, people we can talk to, so that sort of thing. So just as I say, to prepare you for the transition. So we ask, or it's important really, that you do fill in that part 1, new concepts. Then part 2 looks at the more specific 9001 requirements. So we have the various clauses on the left hand side, the equivalent clause in the 2008 standard, and a note or questions about what is new, and have you thought about this, and again, what evidence do you have to support that. So when your assessor comes in, he or she can look at the evidence that you have recorded and verify that as part of their transition visit. So just to reiterate, prior to the transition audit, complete Table 1, new concepts of the gap analysis tool. We strongly recommend you all complete the second part, the specific 9001 requirements. Complete an internal audit and management review against the new standard. In other words, do make sure you have thought about all the clauses, including the new requirements, and ensure all requirements have been addressed within your management system. And a tip: if you do opt to complete the Table 2 of the gap analysis tool, this would fulfill your internal audit requirement because you have looked at these issues, noted your evidence, and then you can show that to your assessor. If you decide that you don't wish to complete that Part 2 or Table 2 of this TR06, do make sure that you have carried out an internal audit against the new requirements, and do take account of the new requirements in your management review. So, to summarise, when you are ready, make sure the office, and that's the NQA head office, make sure that the office and your assessor are aware that you wish to transition at the next visit. Now, you should be asked when the visit is booked if you wish to transition at that point, particularly if it's a recertification visit, and your assessor should also contact you in advance to check that whether you wish to transition. But this is really, we're trying to do a belt and braces here to make this a two-way street of communication. So if you have a visit coming up and you're not sure, or you wish to emphasize or clarify, make clear that you're expecting a transition, do get in touch with either the office or your assessor. Establish if additional days may be required. Again, we should indicate this to you, but it's I think helpful for you to be aware of these things, and it enables you to do your own checks on this. Ensure that the fact that it is a transition is clearly indicated in your confirmation letter. Our confirmation letters at the moment do say that we assume a recertification visit is going to be a transition visit. So if you don't wish it to be a transition visit at this stage, please let us know. If you have a surveillance visit coming up that you wish to also use as your transition visit, again, please do let us know. Make sure that we are aware of that. Do complete Table 1 of the gap analysis tool as a minimum. Ensure that your assessor has sent you an audit plan in advance, and that this plan does reflect that this is a transition visit. You should get those plans in advance, or confirmation of the plan in some form. These plans are put together usually at your previous audit visit, but if it's a transition visit, the plan may need amending to reflect that. So again, make sure the plan reflects that. And again, I can't emphasize enough, please do talk to your assessor or to the office if you have any worries or concerns. Our objective is to make this process, this transition process, as clear and concise as we can, and you'll be the judges of that after today's webinar. Do talk to your assessor or the office if you have any concerns about anything. And again, just to remind you, we have our dedicated transition email address, or do contact the office via the inquiries number. And I can take questions at this point. Again, just to remind you to use the chat box for your questions, and I'll do my best to answer. And again, just to remind you that this webinar has been recorded this afternoon, so you and your colleagues can listen to this again at your leisure. So again, just to remind you of the chat box there on your screen. Now, I can't myself actually see any questions, but Laura, who's assisting me with this webinar, can let me know if she's looking at any questions.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, there are some questions that have come through.
Okay.
So the first one is from Arlene, and she says, could you please repeat the option 1 transition visit?
The option 1 transition visit, Arlene, would be your recertification visit. So your normal 3-year cycle, when it comes to your recertification visit, we would be assuming that that will also be your transition visit. But your assessor will check with you in advance. You may, depending on the size and complexity of your organization, you may need some additional time for the transition. But many clients will not need additional time. The normal recertification visit will be sufficient for your transition also. So I hope I've made that clear, but do get back to us if you're still unsure. And can I just again take this opportunity to reiterate, do make sure that you have a copy of the TR006 gap analysis document and that you complete it ahead of the visit. This is available on our website, but again, if you have any difficulties accessing this, get in touch with us and we will send you a copy directly.
That was actually going to be the next question, Margaret. Quite a few people have asked where they can get a copy of TR006. Can I just add in here as well that this has been emailed to all clients as well. So I encourage you to please your junk emails, spam emails, ensure that you have NQA as a sender that is going into your inbox. And if not, then please do get in touch with us and we can resend that for you for ease.
Thank you, Laura.
The next question is completing table 2 of TR006, does it replace the internal audit or do we still have to do an internal audit of the new requirements prior to the transition audit?
Completing table 2 would amount to an internal audit against the new requirements. However, maintain your normal audit program. So make sure that your 2008 requirements are covered in audit. But by completing the table 2 of TR006, it's a good way of ensuring that you have actually audited all the 2015, the additional requirements. That's why we strongly recommend that you do this, because it's a good way of helping you check that you've covered off everything.
Okay, the next question is surrounding the actual PowerPoint and the presentation itself. Everybody will receive a copy of this PowerPoint within the next 3 days. That will be via email and also a recording of the webinar as well.
Thank you, Laura. I should have made that point clear. Yes, you'll all receive a PDF copy of this.
The next question, actually some feedback from Lee. Thank you very much. We will make sure that we take that into consideration and reference the form in our letters as well. Next question comes from Rebecca. For the context of the organisation requirement, what would the average length of the document be?
The average length of the document for context?
Correct, yeah.
That's an interesting question, Rebecca. I'm not sure there is a specific requirement to document context at all. One of the interesting things about the 2015 standards is that there is less emphasis on documented information. That said, I can understand that people would want to put something in writing about their context. How long is a piece of string? You know, I couldn't say how long you know, it's likely to be, or what the average is. Just have a go. You know, every organization is very different. It's very different in size. It's very different in complexity. All of these things contribute to the context. So don't worry about size or writing things down so much as just giving thought to this, discussing it with your colleagues, and again, you know, during your actual assessment process, dialogue with your assessor. I hope that's helped you there.
Okay, question from Don. Is there a webinar available to show the actual differences between the two standards? Yes, Don, there is, and that is available on our website underneath the transition area. There's also one for 14,001 as well, and 45,001 if you're interested in that one. Next question comes from Melanie. For multi-site certificates for a global company, how many sites need to be completed in the transition visit? For example, we operate a headquarters office in the US and have 3 small offices in other countries.
The transition audit, Melanie, would be carried out at your main office. We would, particularly as you know, as part of the research, we review your whole system anyway, so we would be looking at all of your sites and all the previous audits and so forth of all your sites. So as I say, the transition would actually be carried out at your main office, but we would be looking for evidence that those new requirements extend to the other sites as well.
Next question comes from Jennifer. Thank you for the webinar. What if we want to transfer to the new 14,001 standard as well? What would the recommended time frame be for organisations with an integrated management system? We have 9, 14 and 18,001.
Right, 9 and 14, the cut-off point is the same in each case because they were published they were just published days apart. So for both those standards, the cut-off point is September 2018. So you could think about transitioning the two at the same time, and we have a number of clients who have done that. 18, that will be the new 45,001 standard. I'm not absolutely sure when the publication date of that is, whether it's expected to be sometime in 2017. So it might be feasible that you could transition all 3, that when the 45,001 is with us, so to speak, that you could think about doing an integrated transition of all 3 at the same time. And that might be an option for you. But certainly if you've got 9 and 14, I would strongly recommend you transition those 2 at the same time.
Next question comes from Anne. On average, how long do you think the internal auditing will take compared to the 2008 standards?
Well, that's an interesting question, Anne. I'm not sure it would necessarily need to take much longer. Perhaps, like all of us, you know, even we assessors approaching this new standard, we're learning too. So probably the first assessment is going to take a while, and the second assessment we can do a little bit quicker, and the third one quicker again as we get used to it. So you may find in your internal audit, yes, perhaps initially you'll be taking a little bit longer because you'll be looking at things you haven't looked at before. But my hunch, and it's no more than that at the moment, but my hunch would be that in the fullness of time, I don't think you would need to be putting a lot of extra time. I think you'll just be looking at different things and perhaps talking to different people. But if you're thinking or worrying it's going to require a lot more resource and time, I don't think you need to worry unduly about that.
The next question: Are the other hang on? Do the other sites have to be assessed within a certain time period of the main site certification to the new standard?
I don't think so. I think the other sites, for a multi-site, the other sites, I'll be honest, I'm not sure I understand the question, whether you're talking about our certification visits or your own internal audits. Your sites would be visited in the normal 3-year cycle. Once you have transitioned, as I said before, at your main office where we do the research and transition, we would look for evidence that you have met the new requirements. Thereafter, any site visits, you would have to meet, those sites would have to meet the 2015 requirements. I think, Laura, perhaps we could take that question and perhaps come back on that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, final question comes from John. What will you be looking for to verify compliance to the risk analysis clause?
The risk elements, John, in many ways, and if you have listened to any of our previous webinars, we have emphasized that in many ways the management system standards have always been about risk. Preventive action is actually a risk reduction tool. And we do have a matrix to demonstrate this, and if you haven't seen this matrix, we could certainly send this to you. The risk will be, would certainly talk to you directly about what you consider your risks to be. Now, that, again, depending on your size and complexity, that can be a conversation. You may have a risk matrix, many organizations do. You may have started to think more carefully about risk in the light of the new standard and started to write down what you believe your risks are, and that's fine. We'd look at that and discuss that with you. What your assessor should be probing is where you have a process and a procedure or procedures for your processes, how you go about things, what are the risks that you're looking at? Because every process, no matter how simple, every process has got some element of risk, and you do the things you do to minimize that risk. Now, that's not always necessarily explicit in your mind, but certainly I'm finding in my audit questions now, what I'm really getting at is, why do you do things in that way? And it's often because, well, we had a problem with this in the past. Well, actually, by identifying a problem, amending your process, that's a risk reduction mechanism. So that's the way that we'll be going around that. And I hope that's made sense and that's helpful.
That's it for questions, Margaret. Oh, no, last one, sorry. Another one scripted. Is the matrix available to clients on the NQA website? Can you load a link to the client portal to all the documents discussed here today? So, Melanie, I presume you're a USA client based on the client portal question. Yes, the matrix is available on the NQA UK and NQA USA website. It's within a document called ISO 9001 gap analysis, I believe, client gap analysis. We can try and upload a copy to the portal as well. I'll speak to our US office this afternoon with regards to getting that arranged. For the UK clients, it's on the UK website as well, underneath the transitions and the standards. I think that's it now, Margaret.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to this webinar, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you very much indeed.